You're over 60. You still masturbate, and what I'm about to tell you may shock you to your core. Because while most men hide it, ignore it, or feel ashamed about it, this one act done mindfully could be doing more to protect your prostate than any medication, supplement, or surgery ever will. Or it could be slowly damaging it in ways that won't show up until it's too late. My name is Dr. James. For over 3 decades, I've worked closely with older men, many of whom suffered silently for years with prostate pain, urinary struggles, and loss of intimacy. What I've discovered is that masturbation, far from being a dirty habit, can actually become one of your body's most powerful healing tools, when practiced with knowledge, respect, and intention. And here's the part no one tells you. Your prostate is not just a gland, it's an emotional, hormonal, and circulatory hub. And when you stimulate it the right way, you trigger a wave of healing that clears inflammation, restores blood flow, balances testosterone, and may even reduce cancer risk. But do it the wrong way, and you create hidden tension, hormone crashes, and long-term swelling. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly what masturbation does to your prostate after 60, the benefits, the risks, the critical mistakes, and how to turn this private act into a powerful ritual of healing. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss a conversation that could change your health, your confidence, and your future. And if this message resonates with you, type 1 in the comments. If it doesn't, type 0. I read every response, and your feedback helps me create better, more personal guidance for men like you. Let's start with something most men never hear from their doctors. Yet it could change everything. Each time you ejaculate, your body isn't just releasing pressure, it's performing a vital cleanse, a natural flush of the prostate that helps remove built-up fluid, stagnant proteins, and inflammatory compounds that quietly accumulate with age. This isn't about pleasure, it's about prevention. Let me explain why. 1. It flushes out inflammation, like a daily detox for your gland. Let me take you back to a conversation I had not long ago with one of my patients. Mark, 68 years old, a retired architect from Michigan. He sat across from me, shifting in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. "Doc," he said, "I'm waking up 3-4 times a night. Sometimes it feels like I still have to go, even after I've just gone. But everything came back normal on my labs. What's going on?" I hear this more often than you might think. Many men believe these frustrating symptoms, frequent urination, that dull ache between the legs, or a sense of pelvic pressure, are just a part of getting older. They assume it's inevitable. But in truth, one of the biggest culprits behind this discomfort is something called prostatic congestion, a buildup of fluid and inflammation inside the prostate gland itself. You see, your prostate isn't a passive organ. It's an active, muscular gland that produces and stores fluid. And when that fluid isn't released regularly, whether through sex or masturbation, it begins to stagnate. Over time, those old secretions can harden, thicken, and irritate the surrounding tissue. This congestion doesn't just create discomfort, it quietly fuels inflammation that affects your urinary flow, sexual performance, and even your mood. Now here's where things get interesting. Regular, mindful ejaculation, yes, even through masturbation, helps to flush out these built-up secretions. It's like cleaning out the filter in an old air conditioner. You don't think about it, but when it's clogged, everything runs worse. Blood flow slows, pressure builds, and the tissue becomes inflamed. But when you stimulate yourself in a way that's calm, intentional, and respectful to your body, something amazing happens. The prostate contracts in a healthy, rhythmic pattern. Old fluid is expelled. Blood rushes in to oxygenate the area. Inflammation starts to drop. And that lingering sense of pelvic heaviness, it begins to fade. Multiple studies support this. In fact, some research shows that men who ejaculate between 4 to 7 times per month have significantly lower rates of chronic prostatitis and less overall inflammation within the gland. Not because they're more virile, but because they're supporting a basic maintenance function their body depends on. It's important to understand this isn't about chasing pleasure or reliving youth. It's about giving your body what it needs. Just like we stretch to keep our joints healthy or walk to support our heart, mindful ejaculation can become a form of inner hygiene. Quiet, natural, and deeply restorative. There's also something profoundly emotional about this. Many men over 60 were never taught to view their sexual health as something worth nurturing. They were taught to suppress it, ignore it, or feel ashamed. But the truth is, your body still works. Your gland still responds. Your ability to heal is still alive. One of my patients once told me, "Doc, it's like I gave myself permission to care again. And not just in the bedroom, but in life." That struck me, because it's not just about the prostate, it's about reclaiming the relationship with your own body, releasing not only fluid, fluid, but old shame, old tension, old silence. So if you've been dealing with that dull pressure, that nagging urge to pee, or simply a sense that something isn't flowing the way it used to, don't ignore it. Your body may be asking for a release, a reset, a moment to let go of what no longer serves you. And if something as natural, accessible, and personal as self-stimulation can help prevent all that discomfort, shouldn't we at least talk about it? Shouldn't we stop hiding from the one tool that's already built into our biology? But what's even more fascinating is this. Flushing inflammation is only the beginning, because every time you stimulate yourself, you're not just releasing built-up fluid, you're also triggering something even deeper inside your body, something that supports your erections, your heart, and even your ability to think clearly. And it all starts with blood. Let me show you what happens next. 2. It restores blood flow, which supports erections and healing. I remember working with a man named Henry, 71, retired engineer, sharp mind, but he came into my office with a quiet frustration written all over his face. "Doc," he said, "I'm not the man I used to be. I still feel desire, but it's like the signal doesn't reach the destination anymore." That phrase stuck with me. Because for millions of men over 60, that feeling is painfully familiar. It's not that the drive is gone, it's that the body isn't responding the way it once did. And in most cases, the reason is shockingly simple. Blood isn't flowing where it needs to. You see, erections aren't just about testosterone or arousal, they are fundamentally about blood flow. Without strong, steady circulation to the pelvic region, the tissues that support erections, called the corpora cavernosa, start to weaken, dry out, and lose sensitivity. The nerves fade, the pressure drops. What used to be firm becomes soft and frustrating, and worst of all, many men accept this as inevitable. But it doesn't have to be, because here's what we now know. Every time you engage in healthy, intentional self-stimulation, you activate a deep vascular network in your pelvis, including a region called the periprostatic plexus, a group of blood vessels that surround and support the prostate. This isn't just background biology, this is vital infrastructure. It's like turning on the irrigation system in a garden that's been drying up for years. The very act of stimulating your body, even without climax at times, invites fresh, oxygenated blood into the tissues that need it most. That blood brings with it healing nutrients, immune cells, and nitric oxide, a molecule that helps blood vessels relax and expand. And when this process happens regularly, the pelvic region starts to feel more alive again. Nerve endings begin to awaken, erections become firmer, the skin becomes more responsive. You start to reclaim parts of yourself you thought were fading forever. This isn't speculation, it's science. Studies show that sexual activity, including masturbation, promotes pelvic vascular health. It encourages angiogenesis, or the formation of new blood vessels. And perhaps most importantly, it prevents the slow collapse of circulation that occurs when men go months or even years without stimulation. Now, I want to be clear, this isn't about performance. This isn't about ego. It's about healing. It's about ensuring that blood, the lifeblood of every cell and nerve in your lower body, continues to flow freely. Because without it, everything declines: function, sensation, recovery. But with it, even at 60, 70, or 80, the body can surprise you. I've seen it happen time and again. One man told me, "Dr. James, I didn't realize how numb I had become until I started waking up hard again. That shift wasn't magic, it was circulation, restored, refreshed, and reawakened." And it's not just about erections either. Good blood flow is key to cellular repair, especially in an area like the prostate, where inflammation can silently smolder for years. With better circulation, healing accelerates, inflammation drops, and men begin to feel more connected to their bodies, more grounded, more vibrant, more alive. Think of it this way. Every time you stimulate yourself, you're exercising the internal plumbing. You're keeping the pipes clear, the tissues nourished, and the energy flowing. And just like walking keeps your legs strong, mindful stimulation keeps your prostate and erectile tissue resilient. So if you've noticed the spark dimming, the strength fading, or the response time slowing down, don't jump to despair. Your body may simply need a little circulation therapy. And believe it or not, you already have the tool to make that happen. Your own hands, your own rhythm, and your own willingness to reconnect with yourself. But as powerful as blood flow is, it's only part of the equation, because just beneath the surface, something else is happening every time you engage in healthy stimulation. Something quieter, but just as essential. You're also helping your hormones find their natural rhythm again. And when that happens, everything changes. Let me show you what I mean. 3. It balances hormones, especially testosterone and cortisol. I'll never forget a quiet moment I shared with a man named Lewis. He was 73, a retired Navy officer with the posture of discipline but a heaviness behind his eyes. He looked at me and said, "Doc, I don't feel like a man anymore. I'm not depressed exactly, but something in me feels flat." He wasn't talking about erections. He was talking about something deeper, his vitality, his inner fire. The part of him that once felt bold, decisive, full of edge, now dull. This is the kind of thing most men don't talk about. And yet it's one of the most common things I hear. What Lewis was experiencing was not just emotional, it was hormonal. After 60, our hormonal rhythm shifts. Testosterone, the very hormone that fuels motivation, muscle tone, confidence, and sexual function, naturally declines. At the same time, stress hormones like cortisol begin to rise, especially in men who carry the emotional weight of aging, retirement, relationship changes, and health concerns. This hormonal shift doesn't just affect your energy, it impacts your prostate directly. The prostate is incredibly sensitive to hormonal balance. When testosterone drops and cortisol stays high, inflammation increases, prostate tissue becomes more vulnerable, and everything from your mood to your urination can take a hit. But here's where it gets fascinating and hopeful. Every time you engage in healthy, mindful masturbation, you're not just activating physical pleasure, you're initiating a chemical reset, a natural hormonal cascade that works in your favor. During and after orgasm, your brain releases a wave of neurochemicals that help bring your system back into balance. Oxytocin, often called the connection hormone, helps calm your nervous system and reduce tension. Endorphins act as natural painkillers and mood elevators. Dopamine lights up your motivation circuits, and prolactin helps your body shift into rest and repair mode. And yes, this process also helps regulate testosterone. In fact, regular ejaculation in older men has been linked to more stable testosterone levels and a more balanced hormonal profile over time. Not because it boosts testosterone in some magical way, but because it supports the internal rhythm that allows your endocrine system to function smoothly. Think of it like tuning an old guitar. The strings are still strong, but if they haven't been played or stretched in a while, they lose their tone. You don't need to replace the instrument. You just need to help it find its sound again. When Lewis began to reintroduce healthy self-stimulation into his weekly routine, not compulsively but mindfully, he started sleeping better. His mood began to lift. He felt less reactive. Even his digestion improved. And most importantly, he began to feel like himself again. There's something powerful about knowing your body still works, that your hormones can still respond, that your manhood isn't just measured in performance, but in presence. How fully you feel connected to yourself and the world around you. Far too many men give up on their hormones. They assume they're past their prime. But the truth is, your hormonal system is far more adaptable than you've been told. It doesn't require expensive therapies or risky medications to begin shifting. Sometimes it just needs a little nudge, through breath, touch, and intention. Now, I want to be honest. If you've been struggling with emotional flatness, fatigue, or even unexplained anxiety, it's worth looking at your hormonal health through a wider lens. Yes, lab tests matter, but so does how you live in your body. Whether you allow yourself to experience pleasure without guilt. Whether you engage your nervous system in a way that restores balance, not stress. Because ultimately, your prostate is not just responding to aging, it's responding to your chemistry, your inner environment. And when you give your body the opportunity to regulate itself through natural means, the results can be surprising. You feel more grounded, more clear-headed, more alive. But here's the part no one tells you. As your hormones stabilize, your muscles begin to shift too, particularly the ones you can't see. Deep in your pelvis, a set of often forgotten muscles starts to relax and release long-held tension. And when that happens, something unexpected occurs. Something that can either ease your discomfort or make it worse. Let's explore it next. 4. It clears tension in the pelvic floor, a hidden trigger of prostate pain. Not long ago, I sat with a patient named Gerald. He was 66, divorced, and had been quietly enduring a dull ache in his lower abdomen for nearly a year. "It's not sharp pain, doc," he said. "It's just always there, this heavy pressure. Sometimes I feel it when I sit too long, other times when I'm lying in bed, but the scans show nothing." He looked at me with the eyes of a man who felt both unseen and unheard. Gerald's story is more common than most realize. Men often come to me with vague symptoms, discomfort in the groin, a sense of pressure in the perineum, even pain during urination or after ejaculation. And many times when all the standard tests come back clean, no infection, no alarming enlargement, the answer lies in a part of the body they've never been taught to notice: the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is a group of muscles that sit like a hammock between your pubic bone and tailbone. These muscles support the bladder, the rectum, and yes, the prostate. They also help control urination, ejaculation, and posture. But here's the catch. These muscles are deeply reactive to stress, tension, shame, and inactivity. Over time, especially in men who sit a lot, hold in their emotions, or experience sexual frustration, these muscles can become chronically tight. Imagine walking around all day with a clenched fist you don't even realize you're making. That's what happens in the pelvic floor. The body stores tension there, and as that tension builds, it begins to compress the very nerves and vessels that feed the prostate. It creates a tight, constricted environment that disrupts blood flow, aggravates inflammation, and mimics the symptoms of prostatitis, even when no infection is present. Now here's where masturbation comes into play. Specifically, healthy, mindful self-stimulation. When done without force, without rushing, and with a sense of calm and breath awareness, this act naturally engages and releases the pelvic floor muscles. Just like stretching unclenches a tight back, self-stimulation helps soften the chronic holding in the muscles around the prostate. I've seen men who've suffered for years find relief within weeks of simply changing their approach, replacing shame and performance pressure with presence and curiosity. As they begin to breathe more deeply, to slow down, to stay with sensation rather than chase a goal, something profound happens. The tension releases, the ache fades, the pressure lifts, and their sense of connection to their body returns. Gerald was one of them. I encouraged him to shift how he approached his own self-care, to let go of old expectations and focus instead on movement, breath, and allowing. Within a month, the ache he had lived with for over a year was nearly gone. "I didn't think something so simple could make such a difference," he told me. but it's like my body finally exhaled. What he experienced is something I call somatic healing, a restoration of flow not just in the blood vessels or nerves, but in the way the body holds itself from the inside out. And for the prostate, this is critical. A relaxed pelvic floor means less resistance, better circulation, easier urination, and reduced inflammation. It also means more comfort during intimacy and a greater sense of internal ease. Too often, men are told to just live with this kind of discomfort or worse, medicate it without ever addressing the root. But sometimes the root is muscular. It's emotional. It's years of bracing against life without realizing it. And when we begin to unwind that, everything starts to shift. But here's the part that still surprises many men. While releasing tension and restoring circulation can bring enormous relief, there's one more benefit of masturbation that may be the most important of all. Not only does it ease pain and balance hormones, it may actually protect your life. Because hidden inside this daily act is something linked to one of the most feared conditions in men over 60. And very few know the connection. Let me show you. 5. It may reduce your risk of prostate cancer. Seriously. When most men hear the word cancer, their minds go quiet. There's a kind of heaviness that sets in, a mix of fear, confusion, and the silent question we're often too afraid to ask, could it happen to me? Over the years, I've had that conversation with hundreds of men, and I can tell you this, prostate cancer isn't always loud in the beginning. It doesn't announce itself with pain or urgency. It often starts in silence, growing slowly, feeding on inflammation and hormonal imbalance, before a single symptom ever shows up. But what if I told you that something as natural and accessible as regular ejaculation might play a protective role? I know it sounds almost too simple, but the science is real, and it's something every man over 60 deserves to hear. In one of the largest and most cited studies to date, researchers from Harvard followed over 30,000 men for nearly 2 decades. What they found was startling. Men who ejaculated 21 times or more per month had a significantly lower risk of developing prostate cancer, up to 33% lower, compared to those who ejaculated only 4 to 7 times. And no, this wasn't about being in their prime or leading an overly active lifestyle. The benefits were seen even later in life, even in men who weren't sexually active with a partner. The mechanism makes sense. When you ejaculate, the prostate contracts and releases the fluid it has stored. If that fluid isn't released regularly, it can stagnate and collect cellular debris, oxidants, and potential carcinogens that can damage the surrounding tissue over time. Think of it like a sink. If the water sits there too long, it breeds bacteria, decay, and mold. But if you keep it flowing, it stays clean, functional, and safe. I remember one patient, Tom, who was 69 when he came to see me. He'd just lost a close friend to aggressive prostate cancer and was terrified. He had no symptoms himself, but wanted to know what he could do to protect his health without jumping into medications or invasive procedures. When I told him that one of the most natural ways to reduce risk was through regular mindful ejaculation, he blinked and let out a nervous laugh. "You're kidding," he said. I wasn't. Once he got past the awkwardness of it all, he started integrating it into his weekly routine, not compulsively, not to chase pleasure, but simply as a maintenance ritual. Within months, his PSA levels had stabilized, his nighttime urination decreased, and he told me, "I feel like I'm participating in my health again, not just waiting for something to go wrong." That sense of empowerment matters, because prevention isn't just about pills or early screenings. It's about daily choices that support your body's ability to regulate, release, and repair. And masturbation, when done with care and intention, supports all three. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not claiming it's a cure or a guarantee. Cancer is complex. But what I'm saying is this. Your body has systems built in to keep you safe, and when you ignore or suppress them out of shame or misinformation, you cut yourself off from one of the most natural forms of protection nature gave you. We have to stop thinking of this act as something dirty or immature. For the aging male body, it's not just about pleasure, it's about preservation. It's about clearing the old to make room for the new. It's about staying engaged in your own biology even as the years pass. And if something so simple, something already within your reach, can support prostate health and reduce long-term risk, why wouldn't we talk about it? Why wouldn't we teach men to embrace this truth without fear? But there's one caveat I need to share. As powerful and healing as this act can be, it all depends on how you approach it. Because if done the wrong way, with tension, with pressure, with overstimulation, it can start working against you. In fact, there are 3 common mistakes I see older men make that quietly damage their prostate, disrupt their hormones, and even raise their cardiovascular risk. Most have no idea they're doing it wrong. Let me walk you through them. 6. How to make it healing, not harmful. By the time most men reach their 60s or 70s, they've developed a complicated relationship with their own body, especially when it comes to sexuality. For some, it's become a silent routine. For others, it's something they've given up on altogether. And for many, it's filled with guilt, secrecy, or confusion. But what if I told you the act of self-pleasure, when done mindfully and with the right intention, could be one of the most healing things you can do for your body? The truth is, the body responds not only to what you do, but how you do it. You could do the right thing in the wrong way and end up creating stress instead of relief. That's especially true with masturbation after 60. It can help balance hormones, reduce inflammation, and keep the prostate functioning well. Or it can overstimulate the nervous system, tighten the pelvic floor, and leave you feeling worse instead of better. I've seen both, and the difference often comes down to how a man approaches the moment, whether it's done with presence or with pressure, whether it feels like self-care or just a rush to feel something. Let's be honest, many men were never taught how to be gentle with themselves. We were taught to perform, to get it over with, to disconnect, and that conditioning doesn't disappear with age. But it can be unlearned. When I guide men in this process, I don't just talk about frequency, I talk about quality, about breathing, about slowing down, about learning to listen to the body, not fight it. I'll tell a man, don't just touch yourself, be with yourself. That small shift changes everything. Start by setting the tone. Take a few minutes to breathe before you begin. Relax your jaw, your abdomen, your hips. Most of us carry unconscious tension there, tension that works against circulation and sensation. Then move slowly. There's no finish line. In fact, the more you rush, the more you trigger the sympathetic nervous system, the same one responsible for fight or flight. But when you slow down, you activate the parasympathetic side, the rest, digest, and heal side. Use clean, natural lubrication if needed. Stay connected to the sensation, not the screen or fantasy. This isn't about escapism, it's about reconnection. And when you reach climax, don't clench your muscles or hold your breath. Exhale gently. Allow the body to release fully. That's when the hormones shift. That's when the healing begins. Afterward, give yourself a moment of stillness. Let the waves settle. Hydrate. Go for a walk, stretch. These small actions may seem simple, but they tell your body, I'm here, I'm listening, I care. What I've seen in men who practice this over time is profound. They become more centered. Their confidence returns, not just in the bedroom, but in daily life. They speak with more calm, more presence. Their blood work improves, their sleep gets deeper. And perhaps most important of all, they stop feeling like a stranger in their own skin. You see, this isn't about avoiding harm, it's about restoring wholeness. About making peace with a part of yourself you may have neglected, rushed, or felt ashamed of for decades. When done with intention, this act becomes more than physical. It becomes a statement, a message to your body that says, I still matter, I still feel, I still choose to care. And maybe that's what aging is really about, not shrinking or shutting down, but deepening. Learning to approach the same body you've lived in for decades with a new kind of attention, one rooted in kindness, respect, and yes, even wonder. So if you've ever questioned whether this part of your life still has value, let me assure you, it does. More than ever, because it's not just about stimulation, it's about circulation, connection, healing, ownership. But before we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final message. Because as powerful as all of this is, flushing inflammation, restoring blood flow, balancing hormones, easing pain, and even reducing cancer risk, there's something even deeper at play here. Something most men never realize until it's too late. And it has everything to do with how you define your manhood after 60. Let's talk about that together. Conclusion: a final message from Dr. James. If you've made it this far, let me speak to you directly, not just as a doctor, but as a man who's listened to thousands of stories just like yours. Stories of quiet struggle, stories of confusion, stories of men who spent decades taking care of everyone else but forgot how to care for themselves. You've just heard the truth that most older men never get to hear. Not from their doctors, not from their friends, and certainly not from the culture around them. That masturbation, when approached with care, isn't something shameful or silly or irrelevant. It's something powerful, something deeply natural, something your body still needs. You now know it does more than relieve pressure. It flushes out inflammation that builds silently inside the prostate. It invites blood back into the tissues that keep you strong and responsive. It restores hormone balance, gently quieting the stress that wears down your confidence and clarity. It helps release deep tension stored in the muscles of the pelvis, tension that has likely been building for years. It may even lower your risk of prostate cancer. And when done with presence and care, it becomes a tool for healing, not harm. But beyond all the science, this message is really about something even deeper. It's about reclaiming ownership of your body. It's about learning, maybe for the first time in your life, that your sexuality doesn't end at a certain age, that you're not broken, that your body, though older, still responds to kindness, rhythm, breath, and touch. Aging isn't about fading. It's about refining, about returning to what matters. And one of the most important things I've seen in the lives of my patients is this. When a man begins to treat his own body with respect, his entire life begins to change. He stands differently. He speaks differently. He shows up for himself in a way that others can feel. So, if you've been living with hesitation, guilt, or simply confusion about what's normal or right at this stage of life, I hope this conversation helped lift some of that weight. You are not alone. You are not past your prime. You are simply in a new season of strength, one that requires attention, presence, and honesty. The truth is, healing doesn't always come in a pill. Sometimes it comes in the quiet moments, when you slow down, breathe deeper, and decide that you still matter enough to care. Take this knowledge with you. Use it. Share it. Let it remind you that the answer has never been outside of you. It's always been within reach, and it still is.